Some people are born into struggle, and some are born into a life where struggle never even knocks. But here is the uncomfortable question nobody likes asking. What does being born with everything as actually do to your mind? Imagine growing up in a world where doors open before you even touch the handle, where failure is optional, where safety is guaranteed. Today we are talking about the psychology of people who are born with everything and why it is not as perfect as it looks. Because from the outside, it looks like the dream: money, comfort, connections, a soft landing no matter what. But behind the scenes, something very different can be happening. And by the end of this video, you will understand why having everything can quietly take something away. Let us start with a simple picture. You are a kid. You fall off your bike. Before you even feel the pain, someone rushes in. New bike? Ice cream. It is okay. You do not have to try again. Sounds loving, right? And it is. But when that moment happens over and over again, it shapes how the brain grows. Psychologists call this buffered reality. It is when life's sharp edges are padded so much that you never really learn how sharp they are. Research on child development shows that struggle is not just normal, it is necessary. Small failures teach cause and effect. Effort teaches value. Consequences teach responsibility. When those lessons are missing, the brain still develops, just in a different way. People born with everything often grow up with a warped sense of effort and reward. When rewards come without effort, effort starts to feel pointless. Why push yourself if life already hands you the trophy? This is where motivation starts to fall apart. Studies show that intrinsic motivation, the drive that comes from inside, grows when people overcome difficulty. When kids earn something, their brains release dopamine tied to effort. But when everything is handed over, dopamine gets tied to receiving, not doing. So later in life, these people may feel strangely empty. They have money, options, freedom, but no fire. They wake up bored, restless, and unfulfilled without knowing why. This is where identity gets messy. When your life path is already paved, you're rarely forced to ask the hard questions. Who am I? What am I actually good at? What do I want? Not what looks good? So identity gets borrowed instead. From family expectations, from status, from last names, from public image. Psychologists call this identity foreclosure. It is when someone commits to a role without ever exploring other options. You do not choose the path, you inherit it. A real-world example of this is Brooklyn Beckham. He was born into fame, wealth, and endless opportunity. And over the years, he has tried being a photographer, a model, a cookbook author, now something else again. Every few years, a new identity, and the internet loves to clown him for it. But if you look closer, it is not confusion. It is searching. When you never have to stick with something to survive, you never build roots. You can leave the moment it gets hard. So you keep restarting, hoping the next thing finally feels right. And that is why people who have it all often feel trapped in a life that looks impressive, but does not feel like theirs. Now let us talk about failure. Failure is a harsh teacher, but it is an honest one. When you grow up protected from it, failure becomes terrifying. Not because it hurts, but because it is unfamiliar. People born with everything often develop a deep fear of failing publicly. Their identity is tied to being the successful one, the lucky one, the golden child. So they avoid risk. They choose safe careers, safe opinions, safe lives. Ironically, this makes them less resilient. There is a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. It usually happens when people feel they have no control. But the opposite can also happen. It is called learned dependence. When someone always has a safety net, they never learn how to catch themselves. So when real hardship finally hits, and it always does, they are hit harder than expected. This is why anxiety and depression are surprisingly common in wealthy families. Multiple studies show that teens from high-income homes report higher levels of anxiety, substance abuse, and emotional stress than their middle-income peers. Not because money is bad, but because pressure is invisible. When you are born with everything, expectations are heavy. You are expected to succeed, to keep the image clean, to not mess up, to prove you deserve the privilege. That pressure creates perfectionism, and perfectionism is a trap. Perfectionists do not chase growth. They chase approval. They do not ask, "What do I want?" They ask, "What will make me look worthy?" Over time, this creates quiet shame, the feeling of, "I did not earn this." Psychologists call it impostor syndrome, and it is common among people who inherit success instead of building it. Even happiness becomes complicated. Joy hits harder when it is contrasted with pain. When you have known hunger, food tastes better. When you have known loneliness, connection feels deeper. When life has always been comfortable, happiness can feel flat. That is why some people born with everything chase extremes. Substances, drama, risky behavior, anything that makes them feel something. Not because they are reckless, because they are understimulated. Here is the real problem. Meaning does not come pre-installed. Money can buy comfort, it can buy freedom, but it cannot tell you why you should get out of bed. Meaning comes from struggle, responsibility, and contribution, from being needed, from building something that did not exist before. And when those things are not forced on you, you have to choose them. Choosing hardship on purpose is hard. That is why some of the happiest people born into privilege are the ones who step away from it. They take harder paths. They limit themselves on purpose. They build things from zero. They fail and they stay. They create friction because friction creates growth. The shift happens when someone born with everything realizes this. Comfort is not fulfillment. Once that clicks, everything changes. They stop chasing approval and start chasing purpose. They stop protecting their image and start testing their limits. They stop asking, "How do I keep what I have?" and start asking, "What can I build?" That is when privilege becomes a tool instead of a cage. So here is the real takeaway. Being born with everything is not a blessing or a curse. It is an environment. And environments shape you, but they do not decide you. Struggle builds strength. Chosen struggle builds wisdom. The people who thrive are not the ones with the hardest start or the easiest start. They are the ones who learn how to challenge themselves when life does not force them to. And if you are watching this thinking, "This explains someone I know," or quietly thinking, "This explains me," that awareness alone is powerful. Once you see the pattern, you can break it. Thank you for being here, in your own way,